Wise Wednesdays started on Wise Wednesdays started on April 1st with a humble episode on forgiveness. Between then and now, we've had heart-led conversations on happiness, stress management, relationships, resilience, public speaking, respecting boundaries, self-discovery, mindset, just being, listening, reclaiming your life, intuition, and even food. I would like to thank all my listeners and the guests who gave me their time and trust. It is because of you that we kept going. It is because of you that we kept growing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so, so much.
Hello, hello. Welcome to episode 31 of Wise Wednesdays. I have with me today Sandra Deakin, someone I'd met at the Women's Economic Forum in Egypt earlier this year. Now, she is a global transformational leader. She has her own podcast called Brightspots, and she is a radio presenter, has been in the media for a long, long time, as in is magical with the way she uses her words. Now, what really struck out for me when she came on stage in Egypt was her art of storytelling, her art of connecting with me just with her voice, how her voice just directly touches your heart. So, without further ado, I present to you Sandra, a wonderful, magical wordsmith, totally. Hi,
Wow.
Sandra, welcome to the show.
Hi, Rukia. What a beautiful introduction. It touches me. And thank you. Thank you for inviting me on your beautiful, inspirational show. Thank you. And hi, everyone.
So, for those of you joining us, we are relaying both on the YouTube channel as well as Facebook and LinkedIn. So, feel free to appreciate the host platforms with a subscribe, a like, and just some support, because these are conversations that are truly insightful. And I just can't tell you more about this. Just watch how the magic unfolds. So, Sandra, when we got into conversation on what you would be speaking about, I know, and I will not keep. I will keep that under folds about what you wanted to speak about. But what I found out is you do a course on reparenting the inner child. So for me, it really struck out because that's something that I often talk about. So please tell me what reparenting. What does inner child mean? Let's even start from what does the inner child mean?
Well, Rukia, it's something that I discovered in my own life that I often got stuck, that there were all patterns. And like I wanted, or I longed for so many things. I longed to step in my greatness. And then I got stuck each time. And then I discovered it was my inner child, the part of me that when I was a child that was or hurt, what was keeping me stuck. And the more I started healing that part in me, it was like my inner child, my true inner child, the one that is joyful, playful, eternally young, my inner genius, started coming out. And that was so fascinating. And I so wanted to share that with the world because it's been quite a journey healing this inner child, this part of me that during my childhood, and we all have that, got wounded, and then looking at those wounds or those traumas and unblocking them, and then the inner child inside of me could really become playful and joyful, and it's only since a few years that I'm really connecting with that part of me, and that life has become so joyful and playful and creative. And the inner child, that's how I discovered my inner child. So there are two parts. There's the wounded part, but I discovered that this wounded part also, when we dare to look the wounds in the eyes, when we dare to see what is wounding the child, we embrace it and we transform it, then the real inner child awakens, which is keeping us eternally young, vibrant, happy, joyful. And that's also a part. So there's two inner childs. And the more you do the inner work, the more you connect with that joyful part of you.
All right. I understand what you're talking about, the inner child, but what about those of us who find it difficult to even understand the concept of inner child? Because we feel that we have to grow up. There's
Yeah.
this urgency to behave like an adult. So I've heard a lot of children moving from the teen years to the 20s saying, I'm adulting, or I'm being an adult. I've got so many responsibilities. So it kind of speaks on the reverse, when we talk about inner child as much older adults or much older children. We're speaking about inner child. So how do you kind of create that awareness for someone who's not really mindful of this concept of inner child? And there is a slight issue with your voice. I don't know, this it's kind of breaking up.
Can you hear me?
I can. I think you just have to come closer, because when as you yeah,
And is this better? Can you hear me
yes,
this way? Yeah.
definitely,
Okay.
definitely
Okay.
better. Yeah.
So what I feel is indeed what you say is so true, that children forget today to be children, and we grow up, and then as an adult we become so responsible for life that we forget that to play. It's this playfulness that is so important. It's kind of lightness. And um, I guess also because of the computer games and all that, I feel most humans are far away from this playfulness. But
Hmm.
we discovered that even as an adult. As a child, I used to love, and I still love, the movie Peter Pan, because it's about this principle in a way, like Peter Pan, the eternal child in us. And I don't know if you know the movie. It ends that Peter Pan arrives, and he makes a journey with Wendy, and then he arrives when Wendy is a grown-up woman, and she doesn't want to play with him anymore. And it's sad. I remember that I always feel a little bit sad, because I feel, although we are an adult, it's very important to stay connected with that lightness inside of us, with that freedom, because the inner child also gives us that freedom. That what I love about the inner child is that you look without judgment. A child can look with such innocence towards the world and can find everything so interesting. And the moment we started connecting with that deeper part inside of me, it's like I could look at the world without judgment. I didn't judge, or I didn't look through this, what education or culture had given me, but through the eyes of innocence. And we all have a heart inside of us. It's in our heart, it's really in our heart. But of course, and I guess also in these challenging times, our heart is a bit closed sometimes, because fear closes the heart. But I feel like when you connect with something that made you happy as a child, for example, I do a lot of one-to-one coaching, and what I do with my clients is that I help them connect with something that made them very happy as a child, that made them feel good. For some, it's thinking about a teddy bear, or for others, it's a campfire they used to love, or picnicking. But just that specific memory can open the heart and can really let them connect with that eternal youth, with that freedom, with that innocence, and with that spaciousness inside of us, where we feel we can conquer the world, and we can be creative, and we can be playful. It's all about this playfulness that I feel we are so forgetting these days.
Hmm.
Even as an adult, even if we have problems, even if we have children for ourselves, it's so important. And I think our children even remind us to play as a parent, as an adult. So that are for me all the ways to connect with that freedom, with that deep, innocent freedom inside of us.
Hmm. And I know you're talking about the happy things, but you know what? Sometimes bad things also happen to us as kids.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
those can truly kind of scar you for life. You know, some instances where you're a child and and something bad has happened to you and you're a victim. You've been abused. I'm going to say the word, you've been abused.
Yes,
So how do you then heal that inner child? Because that then becomes a scar that you carry through your life. That then becomes that identity you take on upon yourself. Sometimes you live with guilt, sometimes you live with pain, sometimes it just becomes that place where I don't want to look at my childhood because it's scarred. And
yes.
childhood is such a precious place to be. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, well, that's the thing, and you're so right. It's like we all get hurt, all of us get hurt in our childhood. And I feel this hurting, if we start looking at it from the other side, is just a big invitation to heal and to become stronger and to become this diamond that is also inside of us. Because I really truly believe that in each one of us, no matter how hurt we are, and I mean there are deep scars in people's souls, but there is also an essence in each one of us. And if we can connect with that essence, it's an essence that can never get hurt. It's an essence that can never get scarred. It's deeper, but you have to do some inner work. And what I see is, especially when we are hurt, I even this week I went through something like that. So if we are hurt from our childhood, we avoid, our ego protects us, and doesn't want to go to that pain, and does all kind of patterns in life, and does all makes a lifestyle that it absolutely not connect with that pain. So we do everything to avoid that pain. While what I'm saying is, if you dare to look, if you are courageous enough to go to that pain and just embrace it and just go fully through it, which is courageous. But if you do that, I promise you that you connect with this, what never can get hurt, what never can get scarred. And then something inside of you opens. And that's when you start connecting with that other part, what I call of the inner child, the creative genius, the playful, the freedom inside of us that is so innocent and pure.
True that. And when you say innocent and pure and that deep inner self that cannot be touched, that cannot be hurt, what comes to my mind is forgiveness.
Yes, you're so right.
Because when I look at children, they're so quick to forgive. You know, you as a mom, you might scold your children and kind of hush them away and punish them, and before you know it, they're coming back, giving you a hug, asking you for food or candy, or just forgotten. You know, they've just brushed it off as though it never happened. And I think that's what you mean when you say the inner child that can't be scarred, because they're not allowing anything to impact or influence the way they look at another person, the way they look at how the intention of the other person.
Yes. It's
So
like you see a child and sometimes it falls down and it cries, but 5 minutes later you see it laughing and playing. That is the inner child I'm talking about. And yet I do want to say, because that's what I also discovered in my life, that sometimes we first need to acknowledge this pain.
mm,
Um, and before we can go back to that deep innocence, because sometimes we ignore that pain, and we that was a little trick that I did. I was playful and kind and gentle, but I ignored completely that deep inside of me there were also traumas. And I feel you can only go to forgiveness if you have acknowledged that pain, that child that is crying out loud, like you didn't see me or you didn't hear me or whatever, and then you can forgive. Because what I see happening also is that a lot of people forgive, but from a mental part, and that doesn't work. without going through the pain. I'm afraid I have to say you have to go through the pain first before, and then you can forgive. Because if you forgive in a mental way, it works opposite. And it costs courage. And I feel I invite everyone to have that courage, because life becomes so much nicer, but the world becomes also such a nicer place if people can own their pain and not stay in their victimhood. That's something completely different. So owning your pain is really acknowledging the pain, listening to it, embracing it. And then, if you do that in the moment, pain can only take sometimes a few minutes. Maybe there's layers of pain, but you have to stop the story. And that's the biggest thing that I had to learn, and I guess a lot of us have to learn, is it is like an instant. You get hurt, and then the mind wants to protect you from the pain. So the mind goes in a big story. And that's the moment that we stay in our story. And in a way, although we are a victim, we become an arrogant victim, because we go like, my pain, and I'm the only one who is suffering. But you know what? The one who abused you is also a victim. It's a different energy, but it's also from a pain. An abuser only hurts someone from a pain. And so if you are willing both to look at that, magic can happen, because then this pureness, this that never can be hurt, can connect. And then there's love. Then there's real love and appreciation. And that's the beauty of it.
True that. So we have Tina watching, and she has two amazing questions. The first one is, can you heal without realizing it? She's talking about inner child as well as generally to heal any kind of trauma that somebody is undergoing. And she adds on to say, as a parent, how can we heal our young children so they don't have to work on reparenting their inner child in adulthood?
That's beautiful. I love that so much, because I really feel that today parents can do such a big job in parenting their children, because our parents, the generations of our parents, they were not conscious. I mean, nobody spoke about consciousness, and they were wounded from their parents and their parents. But today, there's so many. I mean, you can go on the internet, or you can read a book, or you can do a workshop. You can so work on your own consciousness. So what I suggest to every parent is, please, please do the inner work. Because what happens is, if you don't resolve your issues, and we all have issues, and if you're not brave enough to resolve your issues, your children, they just imitate you. That's what children do. And they take your rubbish with them. But if you resolve your issues, if you work on yourself, it's like a ripple on the water. That's so beautiful. Your children see how you are standing in life, how brave you are, how in self-love you are. It's something that, for example, a lot happens with mothers, because a lot of women, they don't stand yet in that self-love. And of course, if you as a mother don't stand in self-love, how can your daughter or your son learn that? Because it's all a situation. So what I'm saying is, like, teach them by living it yourself, by doing it yourself, and by daring to be vulnerable to your children. I think the generation of parents that say, like, my reality is your reality, that has to disappear. And I invite parents to be honest and vulnerable with their children, and admit when they make mistakes. Say, like, okay, I was wrong, but how can we solve it? Invite your children to think with you, to create with you, to become co-creators. And such a beautiful poem from Khalil Gibran. I don't know, Rukia, if you know it. It's like, he writes, our children are not our children. It's like, we as parents get a soul in a human body, in a human experience, and there are our gifts, but then we don't own them. So if
Yeah.
we start owning our children and start seeing them as a unique soul, a unique being that you can host and guide in life, but that is still a unique being, they're not your property. I think that would be also a big step in already the child coming into life and being celebrated as a unique soul having a human experience.
Hmm. So what you're telling me is to help our children, we need to first help ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And the children will get it. They will feel you. And children also challenge us, if we are not authentic, our child will show that straight away. Sometimes I get parents come to me and they want to work on their children. And I always say, but start working on yourself first, because where are you not being authentic? And the moment they get real with themselves, sometimes miracles happen. The child doesn't even need to come because the parent is vibrating a different vibration. The parent is authentic, and the child gets it and becomes authentic.
True. So I don't know if this friend of mine is going to be watching this later on, and I do hope she's okay that I'm sharing this, and I'm sure she would be. We were having this conversation where she was sharing with me that her child stammers, and she doesn't know where it comes from because he loves public speaking. He was a little grown up by then, and she said he loves public speaking, but it's just that sometimes he stammers. And I knew that she had this episode where she had to have surgery, and because of that she had to literally learn to talk all over again. She
She,
literally did.
so
She
the
was
mother.
the
Okay.
mother, and and the realization that came from our conversation, and to cut a long story short, is the time that the mother underwent that process of relearning to learn to talk all over again was the time when the child, a very young child, picked up to stammer,
Wow.
picked
Wow.
up that frequency of stammering. And for in that moment of realization was pin drop silence, because that was like she didn't even realize it because she wasn't going through her struggle learning all over again, and she's a doctor herself. So for her it was like he was normal when he was born. And obviously, you know this, you're a coach yourself, that nobody really is born a stammerer.
No. No.
And it's something, a life experience that changes it. It could be your own, it could be something that's influencing your energies, the vibration. So this child picked up the vibration and energy of his mom, and the way he spoke changed altogether. So it was just about learning to heal him as well as the mother, and helping them to kind of release that experience of that pain, of that trauma, of fear, of going through all of that.
Yes. And is it healed now? Is it healed?
No, it isn't completely healed, but there has been some level of, we're working through it. So
Yeah.
there has been improvement, and yeah. So
And
any
they
suggestions?
can heal it. I am so convinced that if they keep on doing the inner work, or she keeps on doing the inner work, you can heal this. Absolutely.
It can
Because
be.
it's just a fragment, or it's a second that something happened, or a thought that can be healed. Yeah.
True. So we have Abdurrahim, who's watching. He says, "You said that embrace and experience the pain, but how can we discreate our pain, as in not create it?" I think there's a fear when people look at going towards pain, um, and as you said, you just have to address it. But please, the question
Yes,
to you.
that's so true. I think all of us are so scared of the pain. And I think that is something that we can teach and learn our children too, that um, pain doesn't have to be bad. We live in this world that everything is happy, happy, and supposed to be happy. But I feel that a pain and going through the pain can bring us into a much higher depth of life and consciousness of life, doesn't mean sticking and hanging on to the pain, because that's the thing, that's also a tricky thing. That's the pitfall, because our pain body, the ego, or the pain body as we call it, is addicted to pain. So that's the tricky thing. Like, and that's why we have to stop the story, because there's a part of us that loves pain and loves to really be in the pain and tell the story. But as I said before, if you just go to the energy and the sensation of the pain, which is in the here and now, the pain is just 5-10 seconds. It's like that little child that falls and cries, but 5 minutes later it's joyful and the pain is gone. So I feel we can deal better with pain if we live in the here and the now, if we stop making stories of it, and if we just embrace it and accept it instead. What causes a lot of pain is that we push it away. Pain. But if we go in surrender, and in my awakening process, that was one of the first things that I learned, was to surrender. There's a beautiful book about it. It's called The Surrender Project. I forgot the name of the author, but it's called The Surrender Project. It's a beautiful novel, and it talks about surrendering. And the moment we start surrendering, pain doesn't hurt that much. It's amazing. Pain becomes lighter, and you can go in the pain and surrender to it, and it's like delight can come out of it, healing can come out of it. And the moment that pain turns into healing or delight, it is amazing what a beautiful moment that is.
True. So 2 episodes ago was probably, I would say, the one of the bravest Wise Wednesdays I'd ever done. I spoke on resolving grief, and a very, very, I mean, most people don't really address grief as a topic, but I said I won't speak on resolving grief. I had a beautiful guest speaker on board, and we spoke about this topic because it was 3 years of my father's passing on. So I kind of took that moment, which was the most painful for me, and addressed a topic which was the toughest that could have been. And the number of times I fumbled before we went online, the number of times I was making mistakes and typing and putting the header, everything. And my guest was super patient with me, and I was literally trembling during the show because it just felt very uncomfortable. But as we kind of moved on, I realized the pain eased, and suddenly the pain changed into purpose, because it suddenly shifted, in the energy shifted to, how can I make this conversation more purposeful? How can I serve somebody? How can I make this of value to someone who stumbles upon it when they need it the most?
That's so beautiful.
So I do agree with you that pain in that moment feels really, really hurting, and it kind of disables you. But once you take it as a friend, or just take it as a purpose, it definitely empowers you.
I agree. I agree. Like I'm working with someone now at this moment, and she really doesn't love herself. I can share this because I'm not sharing a name, and there's no self-love, and now I am so deeply grateful because I've been there in my life. Maybe it's 10 years ago, but I was there, and I felt the pain, and I felt the self-loathe and not being good enough. And I'm grateful now because now I can really support. I can see it immediately when someone is in that space. I can have compassion, which is a totally different place to be, because then I can embrace it and invite the person to heal it. I don't want to fix the person, and because of that, my pain of the past gets a beautiful space, and it's so worth it. I'm really grateful even for the pains that I have been through, because I now can support so many people with it. And what I also discovered, Rukia, and that's so beautiful, if you go through pain in the moment, like if you don't make a story of it, if you're brave enough to step out of your victim role and you just, unpeel the onion and go through the pain, embrace the pain, and have the forgiveness afterwards, you're never frustrated. And you stay younger. It's like I can see that with you as well. You have this eternal youth in your face, and people have that when they do this because it's like unpeeling the onion, and you don't crystallize the energy. Because when you stay in a story, it's like you become a caricature. How do you say that? It's like you become a cartoon of yourself.
True.
But the moment you can really embrace the pain and let go of that old energy, because that's what it is, and you forgive, it's like something in you happens and you come closer to this eternal shining diamond inside of you, and you stay younger. You stay younger because there's no story, there's no crystallized energy. The energy can just flow and flow and flow, and it's amazing. It's amazing to see that with people, how they become younger when they start embracing the pain inside of them. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Tina has a comment, and I have been in conversation with her previously, so I know where this is coming from. She says, if my daughter is on, okay, how does anxiety, self-esteem from sexual abuse be resolved? Also, self-love and realizing she deserves to have the best and she couldn't settle for anything else. So, yes.
Can you say the question again, please, Rukia?
Yeah, so how does anxiety, self-esteem, how can anxiety and self-esteem issues from from sexual abuse be resolved? Also, self-love and realizing she deserves to have the best and she shouldn't settle for anything less. So I think this is the mother in her speaking. So any thoughts about that on sexual abuse, anxiety, and self-esteem?
Yes, yes. I guess we women, even if we are not abused in this life, I'm saying something strange maybe now for some people, but I guess we women in a collective consciousness, we all carry in ourselves, our cellular memory, abuse and sexual abuse, all of us. Maybe not in this life, but it's there. And I guess today we are deeply healing this. And the same thing again, and I know you have to be very brave for this. If you dare and when someone supports you, you need support. Reach out for support. That's my big thing here. Please reach out for support. And feel embraced. You have to feel safe enough. So reach out for someone who you feel safe with, because this person has to hold space for you. She has to be like the earth. I call it the earth mother. Really, that you feel safe enough to be vulnerable, to go through the pain. And when you go through that tremendous pain, what I discovered is that you connect again with this, what can never be abused. It's something inside of us, a perfume, light, whatever you call it, that can never, ever be abused. And when you connect with that, then the healing starts happening. And I know this is very hard to hear for people who have been abused. I know this. And you have to be willing to let go of the story and the victimhood. And that is so courageous if you can. I know it's hard. You can't do that when you've been sexually abused, when you've been deeply abused. And yet, that for me is the only healing. It's the only healing to let go of the story and often if you let go of the story, if you are brave enough to have yourself be supported and go through the pain, you discover that the soul, the only thing that your soul wanted is to teach you what power and self-love and self-power is. Because I truly, truly believe that we live in a dualistic world still at this moment, and the contrasts are even getting bigger today. And I believe that our soul, which is this eternal wisdom or whatever you would love to call it, is here to experience these both sides. If I look at all the transformations that I went through, and that were a lot the past years, it's like my soul wanted to experience the deep empowerment, and my soul also wanted to experience the power. And it's only by experience these two that we become whole, and that we can also step in the shoes of the abuser and forgive and let go.
One step at a time.
One step at a time. It takes time and it takes courage, a lot of courage.
So I know you wanted to speak about reclaim and recreate your best life. And some way I kind of requested you to speak on inner child, and that's so powerful because I think I felt this was something that people would really take value from listening to. So now moving to how would you recommend people to reclaim and recreate their best life? What are your recommendations there? How do you think it's possible?
I'm strong believer that we are all creators of our own life. Each moment, no matter how tough life gets, we can choose. And that as well asks courage these days to keep on choosing, like you said so beautifully today in your life, for the light. And it's not always easy, but I believe we can choose, and that's how we become the creator of our own life. And I feel that life wants to always create something brighter for us. It's like the seed that wants to become a rose flower or a rose bush, but the seed always first has to die a little bit so the rose bush can grow and evolve. So that's what I feel, that life wants to create something bigger and brighter to from it really wants to give birth to something brighter and bigger inside of us. And but for that we get obstacles, because we can only discover our own inner power, our own inner courage, our own inner worth if an obstacle pushes us that far that maybe we say, like, enough now, I'm going to change my life, enough now, I'm going to step in my bravery. And that's what I believe. And by doing inner work and by getting real with ourselves, I feel we can reclaim our life. It's always again the same thing. Step out of your victimhood, no matter how, and it is hard. I mean, there are some things sometimes we step in our victimhood. But what I learned is that you can create a muscle. Like when you go to fitness, you create muscles. And the more you go to fitness, the better your muscles start, the better your body starts looking, and you start becoming strong. It's the same with inner work. It's the same with how we stand in life. If something happens and you say, you feel the pain and you sit for 5 minutes in your victimhood, you can choose and say that, okay, done with that now. I feel the pain, but I don't choose to be the victim any longer. And what do I want to create? That's the next step. If you start being grateful for all the lessons, and I know we get tough lessons, and especially today, humanity is getting a big, huge lesson. We are waking up. But if we can switch something inside of us and even say before, thank you, life, thank you, grace. What are you trying to show me here? What is going to evolve? What is going to be born through me? Our attitude shifts and life will start showing us. And we will start developing muscles to not only reclaim our life. So the reclaiming is becoming master of living in your own skin, stepping out of your victimhood and really choosing each moment. No, I'm not going into that victimhood. I am master of my own life. I feel the sadness, I feel the anger, I feel the grief, and I'm in the moment now. That's totally different than stepping in your soul. So that's what I feel is the reclaiming. And maybe you miss things in your childhood. I mean, our parents were not perfect. The next thing is to reparent your child, as we talked about. Give your child what it didn't get to grow. Give it the love, the affection, the encouragement, whatever it needs. Become the parent of your own child. That's the reclaiming of your child and of your life. And when you are there, when you start mastering that, then the next step is you can start becoming a co-creator with the universe of your brightest self. You can really, I remember my biggest dream was, Rukia, to have a house by the sea, because from when I was a child, I so loved the sea. And the past 10 years, 5 years, I've been creating this life. And my mind went, oh no, we can't afford this. A house by the sea, it's not for me. But every day I started, even when I was pain and going through transformations, for only 5 minutes, I started feeling how it would be like to wake up and to smell the sea, to hear the sea, to put on my jogging suit and to walk on the sea with my, to walk on the beach with my bare feet. And next week I'm moving to the house by the sea. So I created it. But it asks commitment, it asks endurance, and it asks to be brave enough to dream big, to dream from what your soul wants, not your ego. It's not that ego, but my soul, because what I see is that the sea is nourishing my body, it's nourishing my whole being. So our soul wants greatness to be created through us. But we have to get our ego out of the way. And we have to make our ego help us to create that.
True. And when you edge ego out of the way is only when you learn to grow.
Yes.
And grow for me is all about gratitude. It's about resilience. It's
Yes.
about ownership. And it's about wonderment. So that's one of my other acronyms, where gratitude, resilience, ownership for life, good, bad, ugly, wonderment, coming from a place of curiosity, considering what is it that happened to me, or what is it that could be the goodness in this? What is it? Yeah.
I that so much. If
Thank
we
you.
do that, yes, what is the goodness? Because there's always, no matter how dark it gets, there's always a goodness. There's always what you said so beautifully in your life today. This little light is always there. We just have to be courageous enough and curious enough to connect with it. Yeah.
And for those of you who are wondering what Sandra is talking about in terms of my live of earlier today, I do daily live videos on my Facebook page across these platforms, and I've been doing this since 1st of May 2018. Today was day 912 of the commitment, day after day after day, and this is my way of sharing a bit of myself, a bit of those thoughts in my mind, and I call it connecting the thoughts. So the quote for today was, even in the darkest of spaces, you can be light for someone. And I was lucky enough to have her on board while I was doing the live, and that's what she's talking about. Because I feel even when you're in that moment where it feels like it's totally dark outside or even within, and I spoke about this coincidentally at WEF when I started out. I said, when it feels like it's really dark, it's damp, and it feels like everything is a burden on top of you. What if you were a seed?
Yeah.
What if you were a seed kind of just buried under the soil, under the muck, so that you can grow? So that you can grow outside of your story, grow outside of all of that is over you as a weight. And that's where the grow comes from, the resilience, the gratitude, ownership, and wonderment. So yeah, it's just, yeah.
And what I love, Nitya, is I only love it now after years of doing my own transformation. But they call it the dark night of the soul. It's like when you go into that darkness, that seed that is planted in the soil, and you become a new human being in the same life. And it gets so dark. There's this like, it's the darkest moment. We all have that in our life.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I love the moment when that deep, darkness when you don't know who you are anymore and you're completely surrendered. You're dying, and then the dawn breaks. Just that moment when the darkness just turns into that light. Oh, that's for me the most magnificent moment. Each time again when I go through a transformation and it hurts and it's painful and I feel, lonely and I don't know who I am anymore. But when I surrender to that darkness and just in that deepest darkness, when you think life has abandoned me, because we all think that in those moments, life, God, whatever you call it, the universe has abandoned me, but you surrender even to that. And then when that light comes up again, that is magic. And that is like a new baby being born.
And as you say that, it definitely touched my heart. just as you say that light. Um, yes, I felt absolutely in a dark space. I didn't have the kids at home. I didn't have Papa to speak to. Yes, I was very grateful for my husband. I still am. I mean, he's been an angel. But you know those things that you really ache for, because the connection I have with the kids, with Papa, is definitely very, very different. And as much as he stood by me, I was still aching for that. That was the darkness I felt. And so when I was in conversation with my son, he said, "So Ma, what have you been up to?" And in that moment, it just felt like, you can't speak to me like that. I'm your mother. Those defenses go up. And he
Yeah.
says, all of that is great, but what about accountability?
Wow.
Exactly. So that for me was that piercing question that kind of allowed the light in, where it was like, he's talking my language. I've brought him up well.
I get goosebumps. We call it truth bumps. I get so much goosebumps now. How beautiful. What an amazing son you have. Well done.
Thank you. And that was when the shift happened for me, where I felt he's right. I mean, what about accountability? And so I had to kind of decide to, from my learning of the last session, I would say I had to learn to move with what I'm feeling, yet do something more other than just hiding away from the world under the blankets and just pretending I'm not there. So, yeah.
I get to that space as well sometimes that I reside from the world and that I go through my pain. I'm courageous enough to go through my pain, but it's the same thing like, and life goes on and don't keep on hiding in your corner. Yeah,
Hmm.
I know that feeling for sure.
So, and on that note, let's take up Tina's question. She says, "What do you mean by letting go of the story?"
Okay, so what happens is like as a child, we sometimes get hurt or things happen, life happens. And sometimes the pain there is too painful that the mind takes over instead of feeling, the mind takes over and is so brilliant and takes this and puts it in this pain puts it in a subconscious dark cellar where it can never be touched again. And the mind is so brilliant, it makes a story. It starts making a story and it starts believing. I mean, we all see life through our own glasses. There is truth, and then there's your truth, Rukia, and there's my truth. And then there is the truth.
The truth.
But we don't see the truth anymore. So I see through my eyes. And what happens then is that we start making a pattern. And the story, have you ever played that game that someone starts with a word or a sentence, and there are 10 people, and we whisper it into each other's ear. And when it reaches the 10th person, it's a totally different story. So this
Absolutely.
happens when we make a story. The mind makes it bigger and better and worse, and it becomes really a story of victimhood, while it's not realistic anymore. It's how we see reality, but it's not the truth, it's not the reality. While if we would allow and be courageous enough to stop that story and say, okay, that's not really what happened, let's go a layer deeper now and quiet the mind and feel. And that's, I use the body for that when I coach people. I say, like, okay, now the story is here. Where can you feel this in the body? And for some people, it's very hard to go to the body, but they can. And then they say, oh, in my throat or in my heart. And that's when the real healing happens, because then we say, like, I felt so hurt, I felt so abandoned, I felt so desperate. And if you start going there, it only takes a few seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, the maximum. It's like an energy is there that you blocked because the mind took over and the story was there. But when the story is gone, you just go through the pain. And the pain takes 10 seconds. And what happens, that's the miracle, is when the pain opens, when you surrender to that pain, you come into this divine bliss, into this wholeness, into this eternal wisdom that you are. And that's that part of us that I mentioned before that can never be hurt, never be hurt, never be scarred. And that asks practice, and it asks courage, as I said before. Is that clear enough?
Let's wait because there's a bit of a slag. So I hope she's still watching, but if she isn't, she will catch up on it on replay because I've marked the comment so that you know. All right. So how did you come on this whole journey of healing and self-discovery, self-mastery for that matter? Tell me a little about yourself.
Yeah, well, life invited me. Like, we get wake-up calls, don't we? So I was quite successful on TV. I had my own daily radio show. I was into lifestyle. I had a happy marriage. Everything was wonderful. And at the same time, I didn't know who I was. I was running, trying to prove myself all the time, get many viewers, many listeners, looking for everything in the outside world. And then I was very close to a burnout, and my body became ill. And that was my wake up call. And already, luckily, I had interviewed many interesting people. One of them was a lady called Brandon Bays and Deepak Chopra as well. And they had taught me that you can heal anything. You don't, I mean, if you do the inner work, let's put it that way. And sometimes you need classical medication. It's an and story. But they taught me that if you can really want to heal, you have to start listening to your soul, because this is often something that your soul wants you to change in your life and wants you to listen to. So it was a wake up call, and I started listening. I gave up my job. I had a short break from my marriage. I said to my husband, like, I really want to get to know myself better. I want to start a relationship with myself. And he gave me all that space because I have a wonderful, wonderful husband. And that's where I discovered that this story that I made of myself in my head, who I thought I was not at all who I really was. It was very, very confronting. It was like my whole story fell into 1,000 smithereens, but it was deep healing, and it was deep connecting and rewarding, because I became real with life, and life became real with me, and I started living in a complete different dimension, a dimension connected with my inner soul, where at today I don't need the outside world to make me happy anymore. And that's the biggest gift that this inner work and this inner awakening gave me. That I used to need everybody, and I used to need my TV show to make me happy. I used to need an affirmation of my husband to make me happy. Used to, everybody outside me needed to make me happy. And then I fell into this deep emptiness, and I discovered that there was no self-love, no self-worth. And by acknowledging that and feeling that emptiness, where most of us run away from that, and by allowing that, and it was dark, but then that light came, and then I started feeling the love and the joy and the beauty of who I was, but from inside out. And I started working more on myself because I discovered so many hidden treasures. And then I came into an awakening that whatever happens in the outside world, it cannot touch me. It doesn't mean I get shaken. I do get shaken, and I do get sometimes that I think, oh my God. But the beauty is that I just need a few hours to rebalance myself. As before, I would stay weeks and weeks in my story. Oh, this happened to me. I need to call a friend. Oh, poor me. Oh, why is life treating me so badly? Why is this happening? When now I ask myself, what is the lesson I learn here? And I already thank the universe, like, thank you. And what is the lesson that I'm learning here? And it happens much faster, and I come much faster to that inner joy again. I reconnect to that inner joy again, and that's the biggest gift life could give me.
True that. So we have Tina who's still watching, she says, but still need time to ingest what's being said.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it is quite heavy and also a lot of light coming in. So yes, I do agree with her. Um, okay, I'm just going to play the devil's advocate here, and I
Please.
think this is my theme for today has been that because I've been doing that as a coach with all my clients, and why not? The last conversation of the evening, significant. I'd like to do the same. You said your story got shattered into 1,000 smithereens. What about those moments, if at all, when you get pricked by a smithereen from the past? Does that ever happen? And how do you come to that place?
Oh, it does. It does. But I feel it's like consciousness grows. It's like from a small TV, you get, when you work on yourself, you get a bigger screen and a bigger screen and a bigger screen. And the beautiful thing is, when you have that bigger screen, you can see really from above and see, oh, what is happening to me? Little Sandra is getting hurt here. And she's going into her corner now. So you can see yourself doing it. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but because there's a bigger consciousness, there's a wider screen, um, you don't sing in your story.
You dissociate from it.
Yeah.
You
And you
dis-
can say to yourself, oh, I've been there and I don't choose to go there again. So that's something I often say to myself when those smithereens touch me, I feel it, and then I say to myself, because I have this wider vision, uh-uh, I feel the pain, I allow the pain, and I don't choose to go there again. So each time you can make new choices, and you can say, how can I act now and choose now from a better me, from a brighter me? It's practice. Like I said, it's practicing that muscle. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen like that. No.
No, it doesn't. And you just have to be persistent because those smithereens, especially when you're in that new phase of kind of developing a new lifestyle, a new way of thinking, a new mindset, a new truth for yourself, those
Yeah.
smithereens will keep coming and attacking you. They will keep coming and pricking and hurting you. And it's just about knowing that the choice is yours to decide what thoughts to entertain, which story to kind of be in, and who you're going to be in that moment.
And there comes a time, if you keep persistent, if you keep continuing the inner work, there comes a time that you even can say, when you feel from far away that the slithering is coming, that you can say, uh-oh, no, not for me. And you turn around, and that's beautiful. That's so beautiful.
Because that's when you're so empowered that you've made a conscious choice that this is how I'm going to be. This is how I'm going to face it or not face it at all.
Yeah, that it's like, one of my teachers always said, you have a street and there's a hole in the road, and the first time you don't know about the hole and you fall in the hole. And the second time, you maybe walk around, but you still, it still obstructs you. But the third time you say, I'm not going to take that street, I'm just going to take another street. And that's what it's about.
True that. So, any thoughts, any closing comments? Because we're just almost at the end of this. So, any closing comments that you have for us?
Be brave enough to be honest, to be really honest with yourself. That's the beginning of everything. That's the beginning of self-realization. Be brave enough to look in the mirror and to stop pointing your finger. That's the hardest part. When we get hurt, we do this, and it's three fingers are pointing towards yourself. Yeah.
True that. So, thank you very much for coming on board. Lots of gratitude for you. I love the work you do, bright spots, everything about you is amazing. And as I said, this conversation is definitely going to be magical, insightful. Was my promise when we started, and I'm sure you do agree. So, thank you once again, Sandra, for coming on board, giving us your time and your wisdom.
I want to acknowledge you for your beauty and your work and your sparkle in the world.
Thank you so much.
You.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for joining us.